So now that we've done our notes, let's try some examples together and see how we do here. Okay, I'll have to move this over here. So it says you have the coins shown. So there's a bunch of quarters and pennies. They want us to write the different types of ratios. All right, so let's take a look. So the first one says write the ratio of pennies to quarters. So the first thing that's mentioned is pennies. So I want to count the amount of pennies first. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Okay, to quarters. So I'm going to write the word 2. And now I'm going to count my quarters. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay, so my ratio of pennies to quarters is 6 to 7. Remember, you could also write it as a fraction, or you could write it as a colon. So here's a question for you based on the vocab we just did on the notes. Would this be a part to part, a part to whole, or a whole to part ratio? What do you think? You're comparing pennies to quarters. I would say this is a part to part ratio. So I'm just going to put P to P, which stands for part to part. Okay? All right, let's try the next one. Write the ratio of quarters to dimes. So quarters was mentioned first. So again, I believe this was 7. So I'm just going to use the 7 from the last problem. To dimes. Okay, so let's see. 1, 2, 3. So my ratio is going to be 7 to 3. Or I can write it as 7 over 3. Or I can write it as 7 to 3. All right, we are comparing quarters to dimes. So this is going to be part to part again. So a different amount of one coin to a different amount of another coin. So that would be part to part. The last one, write the ratio of dimes to the total number of coins. So the hint here is it has the word total. So that's kind of telling you that you need to add up all of the coins, which also tells you that this would be a part to whole ratio. So I'm going to put P to W because this would be the W for whole. So if that's a part to whole ratio, you're comparing part of it to the entire thing. Dimes is going to be 3. And the whole thing would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. Counted that really quick, so hopefully I counted it right. But 3 to 16, or you can write it as a fraction, or you can write it as a colon. Okay, so that's a good example of part to part and part to whole, and also how to write these. Okay, so let me give you guys one to try. You're going to do pretty much the same exact thing. All right, so I'm going to have you do the same exact one, just using marbles instead of pennies. So do all 3 parts, write the ratio of green marbles to red marbles, the ratio of blue marbles to green marbles, the ratio of red marbles to the total number of marbles. Make sure if it says green first, the number of green has to go first. Try writing it all 3 ways. So fraction bar, colon, word 2, and also tell me whether it's part to part or part to whole. So do this on your notes. Okay, here's one where we have to use a tape diagram to solve it. So let's see if we can figure this one out. So it says the ratio of your monthly allowance to your friend's monthly allowance is 5 to 3. The monthly allowance is total $40. How much is each allowance? So we want to do a tape diagram to show this. The first number is 5, and it says that's your monthly allowance because it says that first. So I'm going to draw a rectangle and cut it into 5 boxes. Again, the 5 boxes is because that's the first number in the ratio. Okay, and then I'm going to put a Y for you because it's saying your monthly allowance. Okay, then it says your friend's monthly allowance. That part of the ratio is 3. So rectangle, cut it into 3 pieces. I'll put an F for friend. All right, now we want to count the total amount of boxes in our tape diagrams. So that would be 5 plus 3, which is 8. Another way of getting that answer is just adding these 2 numbers here. So 5 plus 3 is 8. The total amount of money is 40. So I'm going to take the total amount of money, divide it by how many boxes there are, or by the total you get when you add the 2. That's going to give me 5. So I'm going to put a 5 in every single box. Now with ratio problems, this always works where you don't get a remainder. That's the only way ratios actually work. So you'll never get one that like you divide it and you get like a leftover or remainder or something. Okay, so now it says how much is each allowance. So yours is 5 groups of 5, which is $25. Your friend's is 3 groups of 5, which is $15. So in 1 month, out of the $40, you got 25 from your parents and your friend got 15. So I'm going to see if you could try one all by yourself using a tape diagram. Okay, so let me get you one to try. All right, let's see if you can do this one. So it says the ratio of time a student spends on science homework to time the student spends on math homework is 2 to 5. The total amount of time the student spends on homework for these classes is 63 minutes. How much time does a student spend on homework for each subject? So you're going to start by doing a tape diagram. 2 rectangles to represent science and 5 rectangles to represent math. Count how many total rectangles you have and do 63 divided by that number. and write the answer in the boxes and then see if you could figure it out. Okay, so try this one. All right, let's try this one. So, oh, I keep doing that. So it says you separate 42 bulbs of garlic into 2 groups, one for planting and one for cooking. You will plant 3 bulbs for every 4 bulbs that you will use for cooking. Each bulb has about 8 cloves. About how many cloves will you plant? So this is kind of like a multi-step problem. So let's see what we can do here. Let's start by using the ratio. It says 3 bulbs planted for every 4 bulbs used for cooking. So I'm going to draw a rectangle, I think, and divide it into 3 bulbs. And this one's for planting, so I'm going to put a P for planting. Then it says 4 bulbs for cooking. So I'll cut this one into 4, and we'll put a C for cooking. There are 42 bulbs in garlic, so we have 42 total. So that's the number we're going to be dividing. We have to figure out what we're dividing it by, count how many boxes you drew, or add the ratio. 4 plus 3 is 7, so 42 divided by 7 is 6. Whoa, I don't know what happened there. So I'm going to put a 6 in every box. Okay, so now let's see. It says about how many cloves will you plant? So this is a little bit tricky. So we're only dealing with the planting one. So 3 groups of 6 is 18. So that means we need 18 bulbs for planting. And each bulb has 8 cloves. So we're just going to multiply our answer by 8. Okay, so 8 times 8 is 64. Carry the 6. 8 times 1 is 8 plus 6 is 14. So you need 144 cloves that you're going to be planting. Okay, so there was only one extra step there. Once we found out how many, by doing the same tape diagram thing, then you have to just take that answer. We're only talking about the planting one, so that's why I only kind of cared about the top one here. So there's 18 bulbs, and each one has 8 cloves, so I just multiplied 18 times 8 to get my final answer. So I'm going to see if you guys could try one like this that has like the one extra step. Okay, this is going to be the last one, so let's see if you could figure it out. So it says you separate 72 walnuts into 2 groups, one for snacks and one for baking. So that should be the labels for your tape diagram. Snack, I put an S for snack and a B for baking. 3 walnuts as snacks, so one of those tape diagrams should be 3 rectangles, and I would label it S for snacks. And then 5 walnuts for baking, so I would do a tape diagram for 5 and label it B for baking. Each walnut has 2 pieces. How many walnut pieces will you keep for snacks? So once you figure out what your total amount of rectangles are, first you're going to divide it by 72, fill out the chart, figure out how many for snacks, and then you're going to multiply it by 2 because each one has 2 pieces. This is your last one, so try this.